Hi, good evening. How are you guys doing this Monday evening? Are all of you all doing great? Um, it's an awesome evening. We're going to talk books, and of course, we're going to talk to a very well known author today. Hi, Sandeep. How are you? I'm going to have Sandeep on one of my shows soon for sure. Today, however, we're talking about books, fiction, thrillers, mythology, and history. And of course, it's a renowned author, Ashwin Sanghi, who's going to be joining us. Now, of course, you've read his books, The Rosabelle Line, Chanakya Chant, The Krishna Key, The Vault of Vishnu. The Vault of Vishnu, of course, launched in January this year. He also has a private series, which is like self-help books, 13 Steps to Bloody Good Health, 13 Steps to Bloody Good Marks, and so on. So that's like, that's a very interesting. I hope you guys are. Hi, Vincent. I hope you guys are reading the private series as well. I'm just waiting for Ashwin to join me, and it's always wonderful to talk to authors. Hi, Ashwin.
Hi Lata, great to see
How are you
you.
doing? Good to see you
I'm
too.
I'm doing fine. I'm doing
Okay.
fine. How
So
about you?
how I'm good, I'm good. So how is the lockdown and corona times? How's it been for you?
I guess Lata, for people who are in the world of creativity and storytelling, honestly speaking, probably they are quite used to the fact that they lead lonely lives. So in that sense, for me, it's not really that different. It's just that my day hasn't really changed. It's just that I used to like having the option of being able to structure the day the way I wanted, whereas that
Right.
option disappeared for a long, long time. So I think that's where the problem lies. Not having the freedom to be able to structure your day the way it is.
Yeah, I think, and you're also a person who's extremely methodical, right? You like to plan, you're very organized. You
I
like to plan your day and plan your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like to sort of compartmentalize my day in terms of which are my writing hours, which are my reading hours, which are my work hours, and which is my me time. So all of that is nicely and very neatly compartmentalized, and obviously all of that has taken a bit of a backseat owing to the situation that we are in.
Right. Okay. Now, you are writing the fourth book in the Bharat series, if I'm not mistaken, right? During the lockdown, you've been spending time on that.
Uh, Lata, there are already 6 books in the Bharat series.
Sorry.
The first was a book called The Rosabelle Line, then
Yeah.
Chanakya's Chant, The Krishna Key, the Sialkot Saga, Keepers of the
Yeah.
Kal Chakra, and The Vault of Vishnu. So six
Right.
books in that series have already come out. The
Yeah.
seventh book in the series is due sometime around January 2020. So I've done all the research for that book, but I have still not started the process of writing it.
You mean
Currently,
21?
no, 2022.
Oh,
20,
22. Okay,
yeah,
okay. Oh,
because typically there's a gap of 2 years between every Bharat series book.
right.
The last one came out in Jan of this year, so it's a
Correct.
2 year gap which one is looking at. And but the research for that book is entirely done. The
Okay.
only thing is that I haven't got down to plotting it as yet. And in addition, but I've been using this time to actually craft a couple of stories that I wish to tell using this new web streaming platform. So I've used these last 2 or 3 months rather effectively towards that end.
Okay, okay, that's great. Sorry, yeah, you're right. 6 books are already out, and it's the seventh book. And of course, the Vault of Vishnu, interestingly, span two civilizations, India and China.
Sure.
And today, the world is in a pandemic which originated in China. And again, we're talking about India and China. Don't you think it's very interesting?
Uh, Lata, actually, I mean, it's to my mind, I mean, these are two very, very great civilizations. Really the problem as I see it today is the fact that when our generation looks at the India-China construct, we look at it in terms of China post Chairman Mao. So
Right.
actually, the window that we are looking at is probably something in the order of about 50, 70 odd years. Whereas that relationship really goes back thousands of years. And that is really where the problem arises, because when if you think in terms of what these two countries or these two regions did for each other, it was actually rather incredible in its own ways. Whether it was whether it was Bodhidharma carrying martial arts from the Pallava kingdom into Shaolin, whether it was the traveling of the taste of sugar from the Gangetic plain into the Tang dynasty, whether it was the travel of Buddhism from India into China, and then from there spreading to the rest of the world, there has been so much of interchange, so much of exchange. Uh, Unfortunately, all of that is somewhat completely lost in the in the sands of time, and all we really have now is the fact that the 1962 war occurred, and then we look at China in the context of that as the big brother, as it were. So I
Right.
think maybe in the long run, if one is really looking at trying to manage this relationship between India and China, one will need to find a way to make the expanse that we look at far wider, even though it's not politically expedient. And in fact, at times it's completely difficult to do, given the fact that you are being threatened every day on the border.
Right, right. I completely agree. But two great civilizations, the Silk Route, so many things that we actually had, even in terms of trade, that yeah. So we had a very strong relationship with them till the political, angle came in
our
with present day
our
politics.
appreciation our appreciation for silk is a lot to do with the old relationship we had with China. Our
Yeah,
I mean, China taught us how to drink chai. So I mean, there are so many parts of our lives, and there are so many parts of their lives which are
right.
influenced by us. So in that sense, I think we have to find a way. In India, we talk about what is called soft power versus hard power. Maybe
Right.
the time has come when we really need to try and figure out as to can we leverage soft power in some ways, not at the cost of hard power, but certainly try and use our soft power a little more effectively.
Right. You were talking about the lockdown, and of course, it's changed all our lives,
Yes.
But of course, you also have the self help books that you do, right? Your 13 steps. Are you planning to write a 13 steps book on how we can deal with social isolation, social distancing? Because this seems to now have become part of our lives, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I it's become fashionable to be talking about the so-called new normal. So I'm
Right.
going to steer clear from that, because I'm
Okay.
fed up. I'm fed up of hearing that phrase, that what
Huh.
will be the so-called new normal. I guess we will just take it one step at a time in terms
Right.
of seeing, okay, to what extent can we now be safe? To what extent can we now travel? To what extent can we? I mean, for a person like me, I used to spend about 10 to 15 days of my month doing the lecture circuit between schools, universities, corporates, and associations. All of that has come to a grinding halt. I'm frankly quite tired of doing webinars and online sessions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it cannot in any way replace the excitement that you feel when you're standing in front of an auditorium of 300 people. But
Right.
having said that, to my mind, I think at least the way I see things evolving is that the human condition, you think about people who spent 20 years behind bars and behind, I mean, locked up in a prison cell, and they adapted themselves to that. So the human mind is capable of adapting itself to various situations as they crop up.
Right.
If you think, Lata, in terms of what we as India have also been through, whether it is in terms of natural disasters, whether it's in terms of calamities, whether it's in terms of war, pestilence, it was not too far away that we were dealing with, for example, the bubonic plague. So there are lots and lots of things that we as a country and nation have dealt with in the past.
Right.
Uh, So I think we are capable of dealing with this also. The last thing that I would want to do is write a 13 steps book on social isolation. That seems almost perverse in some ways.
Okay.
Uh, but yes, I would want more titles within the 13 step series to come out, but on happier topics.
Okay, I think that's fair enough, and that's great for your readers as well. Coming specifically to storytelling, that's part of our lives, intrinsic part of our lives. Grandparents, telling us stories as kids when we are kids, and parents telling us stories and all that. Do you think right now, when people are at home, going through a lot of anxiety and various issues, because suddenly this is new for us, do you think reading and reading a variety of books and things is really going to help us get through this phase?
Uh, Frankly, I don't know whether reading in particular is something that is going to help you in this phase, because different people will be dealing with this particular phase in very different ways,
Differently,
Lata.
yeah.
So for someone like, for example, my wife, her day revolves around exercise and yoga and meditation. So probably, I mean, if I was to tell her that why can't you sit with a book, probably that's, I mean, different strokes for different folks.
Right.
Uh, I would imagine that, however, what will not change is the human fascination for consuming stories. And there, I always like to distinguish between between reading and consuming stories. The two are different. Uh, so, in my opinion, there is one way, which is in terms of sitting with a book. There is another way, which is in terms of putting on your Netflix and Amazon Prime. There is a third way in terms of reading an Amar Chitra Katha comic. There is a
Right.
fourth way in terms of consuming a video game, where suddenly you learn about history as a result of a combat game. They are all different ways of consuming stories. And I
Right.
think the human fascination with stories will never change. The nature of storytelling will change, the medium will change, but
Okay.
not the fascination with stories.
Right. And like you pointed out, people now are on OTT platforms. They're watching, consuming a lot more online, digital media,
Yes,
obviously, because
yes,
they can't go out, right?
yes.
But do you see it as, as a threat to books, or, how do you see that? Well, because
Right,
books
right.
can never be replaced, but,
Yeah, but Lata, think about this: that today the medium that by which we consume stories is mostly books,
right.
right? But there was a time in India's history when the writing script, the Brahmi script, did not exist. So the consumption of stories was oral, where storytellers and bards went from one village to another telling the story. And
Right.
then when the writing system came about, then the nature of storytelling changed, because now we could consume it through the written word. Similarly, going forward into the future, one can't say that the mechanism for consuming stories will necessarily be the written word. I personally am one of those who prefers the written word.
Right.
So I am. It's my love for books that guided me into the world of storytelling. But I don't necessarily believe that will be the de facto mechanism for consuming stories going into the future. The way, at least I see it, is that we are going to be looking at multiple forms of storytelling, and they will all increase the overall size of the pie. So whether you may be someone who is more comfortable reading a written page, and in your head it's your own voice that is telling you that story, that may apply to you. There may be someone who says, "Hey, listen, I'll wait for the movie or the Netflix series." There'll be a third person who says, "Listen, I've heard about this particular movie, but I think, I would rather get immersed in an interactive game related to this movie." Or there will be a fourth who says, "Listen, give me just the summarized version of this in the form of an illustrated novella or a comic." So it's very difficult to say as to which one of these is going to be the king of the castle, as it were.
Right.
All one can hope for is that all of them put together would be a
Hmm.
larger size of pie.
Yeah. Somebody's interestingly asking about audiobooks. You know, that seems to
So,
be the new, the technology that people now listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks.
absolutely.
Yeah, that seems to be like an on the move, kind of thing which you can do, like when you're traveling or,
Of course.
yeah.
Lata, I know for the, I mean, the misnomer readers, when I talk about readers, I'm actually talking about consumers of stories,
Right.
because there are those readers who are not really readers, but they actually wait for the audible version of the book to come out so that they can listen to it either when they are traveling in the car from home to work,
Right.
alternatively when they are sitting on a flight, or in the privacy of their living rooms. So, Audible is an extremely important way of getting people who are otherwise not comfortable with the written word to be able to consume the story. So all of these are going to eventually add up. It doesn't. I think the format is going to become irrelevant, increasingly irrelevant as we go along.
Okay. So coming to, the way that you write, you find inspiration, like, for instance, I read in an interview where you'd said your inspiration for the vault of Vishnu came from sugar, like you were drinking
Yep.
tea somewhere and then,
Yes.
you suddenly hit
Yes.
upon this idea. So your next book, which you're writing, so is that also, was that also an inspiration from an everyday thing that happened to you? Does every book come from everyday life for you?
Uh, to a certain that there are two distinct phases in the evolution of the book, in terms of the idea, in terms of the book
Right.
idea. Uh, the most of my ideas come when I'm not looking to write a book. So they come during everyday interactions with people. When we wrap up this Insta live, and I may look back on this conversation, and it's possible that in my head I may have this notion that, oh, there was a very interesting question that Lata asked me, and so what I will do is always I will capture those ideas the moment that they occur. I have this rather fanciful email account which I use to email myself, and over the years I've emailed myself a little over 10,000 times,
Wow.
uh,
Okay.
with various little nuggets of information, pictures, video links, photographs of certain interesting pages or paragraphs from books, questions that I've been asked, thoughts that popped into my head, uh, little snippets of poetry or shairi, and anything and everything lands up into that place. But eventually, when it comes down to writing a book, uh, I will have not only an idea, but there will also be a trigger which will result in me wanting to go back and explore that idea. So, for example, in the case of Chanakya's chant, it was the 2009 elections,
Right.
which prompted Chanakya's chant, because it sort of made me wonder whether politics was always so messy in history. So, when we talk about the good old days, were the good old days really that good? Or, for example, the Krishna key was someone uh, bringing up a excuse me, bringing
Right.
up a reference to the Kalki Avatar, the tenth incarnation of Vishnu.
Vishnu.
So, I mean, Keepers of the Kal Chakra was the result of a chance conversation with a friend, and who recommended a particular book for me to read, which talked about how modern day quantum theory is actually exploring the very same ideas that the ancient Rishi Munis of India were exploring. So the moment I start, there will always be a trigger. But more often than not, once the trigger has happened, I will go back to my idea bank and I'll find that actually some of those ideas were already there.
Okay.
That's when I start my research.
Right. And I'd also read, like, sometimes, you put together before you actually write the book, you write a synopsis of it in a way.
Sure.
And then,
Because as you started out this interview, you started by saying that Ashwin, you consider yourself to be an organized person. For
Yeah.
me, a Bharat series book evolves in 3 or 4 stages. The first stage, of course, is, as I mentioned, the ideation stage. The second stage is usually the research stage. The research stage will start with typically developing a reading list, or maybe a travel list, or maybe deciding in terms of particular videos that I need to watch. It could include making a list of people that I want to interview. That will then result in a research process which can be anywhere between 6 months to 9 months in terms of getting all the required material. The next 3 months are typically spent on the plotting of the book. For me, all my plotting is usually done on Excel spreadsheets because I like to have each row defining a chapter. So, chapter one will be a row, chapter two will be a row. And within that row, I will normally know within a couple of hundred words as to what is happening in that particular chapter and how that chapter will eventually evolve.
Right. And
Uh,
I read, yeah, sorry.
No, the other thing, of course, is that once I'm done with the plot, that's when I actually start writing the book. Writing of the book, frankly, Lata, for me is the easiest bit because
Okay.
it requires very little effort. Once you have an outline, it's almost like a child using a coloring book because the outlines are already there, and you simply then need to decide whether you want to use a red crayon or a blue crayon or a green crayon. Uh, and then once I'm done with that, once I'm done with the writing, then another 3 months towards rewriting. I've always maintained that I'm a lousy writer, but I'm a fairly decent rewriter. So I bring it up to a standard where my editor can see the document. And
Okay.
typically a couple of months in terms of editing and polishing. So that's how the entire 2 year process
Takes,
flows.
yeah, yeah. I also read somewhere that you were working on something like where AI could actually help the writing and creative
Oh,
process. Is that still on? Are you still
oh
doing
yes,
that?
very much so. My dear friend Vikram Chandra,
Yeah.
who of course is the author of the famous Sacred Games, we were having a chat, and Vikram told me about this very interesting idea, which was, I mean, Vikram is one of those very, again, an oddball type of character because on the one hand, he's a writer of wonderful fiction, but on the other hand, he spends his time really doing coding and algorithms because, I mean, he's into computer science. So in that sense, he said, how many times have you ended up working on a novel where after the novel is printed, you suddenly realize that there was a glaring error? And it's happened to me more than once, Lata. I
Oh.
mean, in the case of, for example, Chanakya's chant, there is a paragraph where one of the main characters, Chandni, is described as this beautiful damsel with blue eyes, and towards the last 10% of the book, I describe her with her green eyes sparkling. Now,
Okay.
uh, I mean, eventually that did get rectified in the Kindle edition, but I asked my publisher not to rectify it in the print edition because I wanted to know how many
Ah,
people would pick up on that.
actually noticed. Okay.
And those are very, very sort of typical things that crop up, particularly when you're doing plotting. You realize that, listen, you've brought in reference to a character who you've already killed off 10 chapters ago, or you're referring to a historical event that doesn't match the timeline of your story. So there are many things like that where, frankly, if you were using a word processor that was far more intelligent, if it had a certain ability to use its own artificial intelligence to compensate for the author's natural stupidity, then in that event, probably we could do a better job in terms of plotting and writing our novels. And so Vikram, along with the team, has been working on this particular software, and from time to time, he requires input from a bunch of authors in terms of how does this feature work or how should this feature work. And that is where guys like me come into.
Okay, okay, that's very interesting, and I think it's going to be even very useful for aspiring authors. You know, authors who are just writing their first novel and so on. Um, so,
Oh, absolutely.
because a seasoned author like you, for instance, you've already got everything in place. You know, your
Yeah.
processes and. But I think for people who are just starting out, that's going to be a really useful tool. One of the things is, we love to thrive on conspiracy theories and mysteries, and your books are filled with that. And I think, that's what, of course, lends itself. Like, we want to read it, we want to know more, we want to delve into it. Um, do you think that but as a writer, as an author, is that the genre you always want to be in, or do you want to start exploring other genres as well?
No, for me, it's never been about. See, I am a conspiracy buff at heart,
Okay.
because for me it's never about the story. It's usually what fascinates me is never the story, but the story behind the story. So, for example, for me, simply the coronavirus is not a story, but all the various delicious alternatives around how that particular virus came into being. That for me is where the meat of this discussion lies.
Right.
Similarly, for example, for me, simply the mythology of an event like the Mahabharata and a character like Krishna is not interesting. But when I start looking at the possibility that Krishna could have been a historical character and that the events in the Mahabharata could have been real, then in that case, that becomes exciting for me. So, by nature, I am a person who is always wanting the story behind the story.
Right.
Having said that, that does not imply that I'm not open to exploring other genres. So, for example, I ended up writing two crime thrillers with James Patterson, Private India and Private Delhi, which did
Yeah,
not
the
deal
pride.
with conspiracy theories. They were
Yeah.
out and out crime thrillers. And in going into the future, I will be writing more crime thrillers also. Similarly, for example, my non-fiction space has nothing to do with conspiracy. It is entirely about how to demystify very normal, very common day topics.
Right.
Uh, Going forward, there are some genres which I have not yet explored, which interest me. Like, for example, I would say science fiction is a space that I would really like to write in. Horror and paranormal is another space that I feel has not been adequately explored by Indian writers. So I
Yeah.
think there are many, many spaces that I would like to write in. My greatest nightmare is I would say not greatest, probably the two nightmares that I have. Number one uh, is that uh, I have a multiplicity of stories in my head, and I die before being able to tell them. Number one, I would say that is a nightmare, and the other nightmare is probably the fact that there is an apocalypse in the world, and everything comes to an end, and the only surviving book is an Ashwin Sanghi book, and that becomes the default version of history for future generations. That also scares me a lot, because I mean, Ashwin Sanghi considers himself to be a simple paperback writer, certainly not a scholar or a historian or a theologian. So that becomes then the de facto version of events, because that's the only written record. So both of those are nightmares that I'd rather not deal with.
Yeah, but this apocalypse right now, this pandemic is like, it's given rise to the fear that anything can happen in the future, I think.
Absolutely.
So,
So, in that sense, I mean, recent readers of the Vault of Vishnu wrote into me, and they said, I mean, when I'm reading passages where I'm seeing that there are superhuman soldiers on the Chinese side coming into India's borders, and then I'm reading of a research laboratory in China set in Beijing, where there is an underground laboratory where some sort of new enzymes are being created, and then I'm reading the newspapers. It's almost like sort of, what
the
is it?
same.
I mean, so as they say, fact is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
Uh, And so in that sense, I think that we are now increasingly living in a world where there is going to be increasing interplay of fact and fiction, where very often you will be influenced by events that happened and you spin a story around it, but then that story in itself becomes the reason for a project to be undertaken by someone else. Like, for example, let's say Ronald Reagan's Star Wars program. People laughed at the fact that there is a Star Wars program, but to a very great extent, what happened in terms of the space program of the Americans, to a large extent, was influenced by popular culture such as Star Trek or Star
Right.
Wars.
Right.
So I think the two are going to play a very, very important role in terms of influencing one another.
Right. Also, the women in your books are very strong characters. They pay, and highly respected, the way they've been written. And also historically, if we see in India, our goddesses and the way we respect
Of
them, and
course.
even historical characters, they've been highly respected women. But today, the reality is so different around us.
Absolutely.
Um, there seems to be a huge gap, versus history and versus reality, modern day India. Do you think that we have somehow culturally, we seem to be losing some aspect of what we really are or were, you know?
I think what has to a certain extent happened is that maybe we have, uh, you know, in some ways, by putting Devi Ji in the mandir, we have removed Devi Ji from our homes. So it's fine to sort of celebrate Navratri and end it with the victory of Durga. Uh, but the Durga in our own lives is has been relegated into some sort of obscure corner, and that is really what I find extremely unfortunate. Because if you really think about it, Lata, in our world, we tend to think of the world in the form of dualities. We tend to think in terms of light and dark as being opposites. I have never considered them opposites. For me, darkness is simply an absence of light. It is not the opposite of light. Or, for example, heat and cold, they are not opposites because cold is simply an absence of heat.
Right.
Uh, or foolishness and wisdom. I mean, foolishness is simply an absence of wisdom. In that sense, for me, I have never treated Shiva and Shakti as opposites. To me, Shiva is the absence of Shakti. I see it as so. For me, there is nothing like male energy. Male energy exists as the absence of female energy. All our energy is Shakti. Some of us have more of Shakti and some of us have less of Shakti. So for a person who thinks like that, for me, it is but obvious that within my novels, Shakti will always play a very, very important role. And as a result of which you see that in most of the Bharat series books, there is the prominence given to the female characters always tends to overshadow the male characters. But that is
Right.
not something which is done on purpose. That is something which is very, very intrinsic.
Right. Who are the other authors that you read? Some of the other authors that you enjoy reading?
Well, uh, frankly, Lata, I don't really read authors. I don't
No.
have favorite authors because my what I do have is favorite books. Because,
Okay.
like for example, I mean, even with an Ashwin Sanghi, or let us say an Amish Tripathi, or an Anand Neelkantan, or a Devdutt Patnaik,
Patnaik.
uh, or uh, so many others. If you will ask their readers, which of their books have you read, they'll say, no, that guy's this book and this book was very good, but I didn't really care for this and this. And
Right.
it's so difficult for us to be able to actually serve all our readers and make sure that they are uh, they are content with every piece of material that we turn out. It's just not possible because every book is going to be different and it's going to appeal to a different set of people. So, in that sense, from from an early stage, I realized that I don't have favorite authors. What I have is favorite books because even
Okay.
someone who is usually a favorite, like a let's say a Jeffrey Archer, I would find that when I look at books like Shall We Tell the President or Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, I find it difficult for other books to be able to meet that standard, that particular benchmark. When I look at a Dan Brown, I find it difficult for books like, let's say, hypothetically, The Lost Symbol to be able to meet the standards of the Da Vinci Code.
Right.
So let me make this easy by giving you a few books which I
Enjoyed.
think they've had a lasting impression on me. I would say one of those books is a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by
Okay.
Paramahans Yoganand. That's a book which really sort of influenced me, and I have ended up reading it more than 10, 15 times in my life because it made me understand that what I consider to be reality doesn't really have to be real. So, I mean, it's absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and just because I cannot understand something doesn't make it less real. So it inculcated in me that openness to be able to say, "Oh yes, bye." In case my the ancient rishis were talking about levitation, just because I have not seen levitation happen doesn't make it scientifically impossible. And so then I talk about something like that in the Krishna theme. So this was a book which did that to me. Another book which influenced me a lot was probably Freedom at Midnight by Dominique Lapierre.
Right.
Because for the first time, I realized that it's possible to actually use history and tell it like a story. Because we have grown up in an environment where the school system made history very, very boring. uh, we were just supposed to mug up dates and temples and the five best points of every Maharaja or every emperor.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
we were never told history as a fascinating story. And so that's the first time I realized that no story, history can be so interesting. So I think that was a second book which was very important. A third book which remains an all-time favorite is Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie.
Salman Rushdie.
Uh, because again, and mind you, again, I'm not a Salman Rushdie fan because there are many books of his which I've read which I've not liked. But then Midnight's Children was a book which inspired jealousy within me because I knew within my heart that I will never be able to attain that caliber of writing. So I knew that it would always be a distant dream. Uh, so that was again a book which was tremendously important to me. Uh, a book called Jesus Lived in India by Holger Kirsten again was
Okay.
a very important book because for the first time it opened up my eyes to the fact that there is far more that links Abrahamic and Dharmic than we care to believe. And of course, all-time favorite wins hands down is probably the Da Vinci Code by Dan
By
Brown.
Dan Brown.
I remain probably his most ardent fan.
Okay, that's great. And I think, viewers, you guys should read all the books that he mentioned because I haven't read the first one by Paramahamsa Ji, but the others I have, and these are very good books that he's mentioned, of course, other than Ashwin Sanghi's books, of course. So,
So sweet.
okay, my last question to you would be three of your books have been picked up to be made into films or mini-series, right? The Sialkot Saga, the Krishna Key movie, and the Rosabelle Line. Any updates you can give us on that? When we can expect to see it on
You know,
screen?
Lata, so many of my books have ended up not only getting optioned once but several times.
Okay.
So, like for example, Chanakya's Chant was in the year that it came out, it was optioned by UTV. Then it got re-optioned for a second and a third year. Then it got optioned for a TV series. Then it eventually got optioned for a OTT series. And all of those option periods expired and the book never got made.
Oh.
The Krishna Key got optioned for a movie, first for a TV series, then for a movie, and eventually the rights were all not only optioned but acquired. And now it's been about 2 years, but for whatever reason, despite the fact that a script got created, it never got made. It's not yet got greenlit.
Okay.
The Sialkot saga is has been sitting with director Hansal Mehta for almost about now what, a year and a half or 2 years, with the intention of making into a series, but hasn't got made. So frankly, I have stopped predicting uh,
Huh.
what what producers or platforms will do with my books, because frankly, what I'm realizing in this industry is that there is a disconnect between the world of writing and the world of production. Uh, we as novelists, we do not think of our books in terms of how they will play out on screen. Whereas ideally, producers and directors and platforms want those stories to be told in a way so that adaptation becomes very, very easy. When you look at a book like, let's say, the Rosabal line is not only operating in terms of multiple geographies, but is operating in terms of multiple lives, because there are parallel lives playing out in different uh, uh, parallel lives of the same character playing out. So to actually be able to adapt that is so difficult. So I think, at least as far as I'm concerned, the approach I'm taking is that, listen, my job is, as a novelist, is that it gives
Is
me all the freedom and the flexibility to tell the stories the way I want. I will continue doing that. However, I don't want to lose out on the storytelling of streaming platforms and movies. And so I've decided consciously from the year 2019 onwards to actually devote a certain part of my time writing directly for that medium, which is what I have been
okay.
doing. So
Okay. Okay.
those projects are yet to sort of eventually see the light of day. But I would
Huh.
imagine that probably in a year or a year now, you have the Ashwin Sanghi tag on them.
Okay. So we can hope for something next year, 2021.
I would imagine so. Towards the end of next year, you definitely should see something with the Ashwin Sanghi label.
Okay, so guys, that's brilliant news. So there is going to be a series, I'm hoping, on one of the OTT platforms that's going to come in 2021 with, directly from Ashwin Sanghi rather than other people. It's going to be, so you're writing the story and that's brilliant. And I think this is great news also, because given that the OTT platforms require content and they're looking for exclusive content, I think it's
Absolutely.
great that, authors like you are making the effort to create special content for them, because not everything which is in a book can be converted into an OTT series. And I think
Precisely.
that's important to
Precisely.
understand.
You've hit the nail on the head. So what I'm realizing is that books and shows, or books and movies, are very, very different animals, Lata. And the sensibilities required to be able to adapt a book into an appropriate story for a show or for a series or for a movie, is the challenges out there seem to be far greater than someone like me simply applying myself and saying, if I didn't write this up as a book and I wrote this up as a show, how would this work? And I
Right.
think that's really where I'm applying myself these days.
Okay, okay, that's amazing. Thank you so much for chatting with me. This was it was a wonderful chat, and I think you've given us some exclusive news also, which is great. And I think the audience and your readers are going to love it, because now not only did they get to read your books, but they're also going to see something special,
That
on the OTT platforms, and that's going to be
so,
great. Thank you so much for chatting with me, Ashwin.
no, it's a pleasure, Lata. You and I have interacted a couple of occasions in the
Yeah,
past, and it has
yeah.
always been a pleasure. And through through this Insta Live, I want to wish you to stay safe and stay healthy, and I want to wish the same to all our viewers who are joining us today. That take care of yourselves and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You take care too, and looking forward to your next. Thank you so
Take care.
much. Take
Bye.
care. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.